Hello and welcome back to Superliminal, and on today's show I have Gareth Icke. I've been trying to get Gareth on the show for about 6 months, and for some reason we just haven't been able to line up our diaries, but at last I've got him on, and I tell you what, it was so worth the wait to get him on. Such a beautiful conversation. So for anyone who might not know who Gareth is a human, a presenter at Ickonic Media. He's a walker and has a great separate channel on YouTube called The Walk, I think it is, but it's at Ike Walks. I will link to all this on the show notes as well. Gareth is also a musician, a writer, and an ex-England beach soccer player. He's a husband and also a dad. Now, I had so many questions lined up for Gareth. I sat down the night before and wrote out about sort of 20, 25 different questions, including the usual stuff you'd expect me to ask someone with the surname of Ike, and things like Trump, digital IDs, what's going on in the Middle East. And you know what? We didn't even touch on any of that. Instead, the conversation, as the best conversations always do, went in this beautiful, heartfelt direction. The clue to which is in the title slide, but I'm going to let you listen to the episode to see how that went. It really was beautiful, and I would love to get Gareth back on in the new year to talk about the other things that we missed. So yeah, enjoy, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So the usual, please do comment, share, subscribe, and like if you enjoy Superliminal and the wisdom of the guests like Gareth. And remember to hit the little alarm button on YouTube as well, which will tell you when the next new episodes are out, because it really helps with the algorithm, and it helps to get the wonderful wisdom, again, of people like Gareth out to other great people like you who would enjoy it. But apart from that, that's it for now. Enjoy the show, and I will see you in a second. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Superliminal Podcast. And as you'll have seen from my intro video, I'm doing it again, I say this about just about every single guest. I'm so excited about this guest that's coming on today. Well, I really am this time. I am every time, I guess, really, if I'm being totally honest, because I'm really easily pleased. But, I've got none other than Gareth Icke on Superliminal today. And I've been wanting to get Gareth on for a while because he's such a core member of the Ickonic team. I really wanted to get an understanding of what his perspective is, that's in terms of what's going on in the world, and most importantly, how we can all wake the heck up and start taking back our own power. I mean, I've no idea where it's going to go. I've got, like I said to Gareth off camera, I've got like pages and pages of questions, but I'll probably ask 2 of them. But anyway, Gareth, welcome to the show, and thanks ever so much for joining us. It's a real honour.
That's a pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So, Gareth, take us back to the very beginning. Obviously, everybody knows you've got a very famous dad. But yeah, tell us about the start of your life and how things unfolded to you as your dad went through his football career, then his TV career, and then obviously his head blew off, as he puts it, in 1990, and the shift that had in terms of how you saw the world, but your experience of being at school as well.
Well, I came after the football career, so I never saw any of that stuff. I was after that. But I was like quite an ill kid. Like I had not as in sickness ill, but in structural skeletal ill. So I had a bone wasting disease called Perthes disease. So I had these 2 surgeries. I had 2 eye surgeries as a toddler as well. And so I think it's funny because I was having these conversations with people during the whole COVID time, and I was trying to work out how there were people that saw through it within 20 seconds, and there were people that still didn't see through it after 18 months. It was quite confusing. I didn't get it. And then I saw this conversation with some psychologists that were talking, more our sort of way of thinking, but mainstream in terms of their industry. And they were being asked these same questions on social media. And they were basically saying that it wasn't, definitive, but there was enough evidence to at least suggest that some form of trauma, whether it be physical, mental, sexual, whatever, in earlier life prepared people to almost see through stuff more, whether that be because they realized that they had to take responsibility for themselves, whether it was because they realized that life could be quite shit sometimes, and therefore actually they were more open to a conspiracy, as opposed to someone who probably had a great life that would just think, no one would do that because everything's just, fairies and roses and stuff. So when I saw that, I thought, I wonder what, obviously there's a connection with growing up with my dad, obviously seeing through stuff because I was, exposed to stuff a lot in terms of information. But then I think part of it was possibly because when I was a kid, I was in and out of hospital and I've had 8 surgeries as I sit here now and all this kind of stuff. So I'd kind of been through the mill a little bit. And so, I kind of saw the world slightly differently. I've always had an authority problem that I was born with that. So even at school, at school, the amount of times like I would sort of, I remember watching a Ricky Gervais stand up and he was talking about how he just knew that the teacher was chatting shit and he knew that the teacher didn't know, like they were just out of their depth and he was going to call them out on it. I was exactly the same. A teacher would be teaching stuff and I'd be putting my hand up just going, sorry, miss, but that's not true, is it? That's not true though, is it? And you'd watch them fumbling around the textbooks and they hated me. But but ironically, when I was older, I ended up going back to these schools and teaching like creative writing and stuff like that. And some of the teachers were still there, obviously a lot older. And I got on like a house on fire. Yeah, I got on great with them. And they were like, you were a nightmare. But they respected me though for that. It was like they in my like school reports, they weren't great reports, but they would say like lovable rogue and whatever. They weren't. I wasn't a nasty kid, but I wouldn't let them get away with shit either. And then, the school, when the dad thing was strange because dad was famous and he was at the BBC. And obviously these were the days before camera phones. So people would come up, shake your hand, shake his hand. They'd come up, they'd ask for an autograph. But obviously, you didn't have phones and stuff. So they weren't taking photos. And then it suddenly went from that to people shouting abuse and laughing. And as a kid who wasn't really exposed to, the TV and the newspapers and stuff, I didn't really understand what was happening. Like I thought everyone loved me dad. Now they're all shouting at him. I'm a bit confused. And, went through the mill with that. And I had journalists camped outside the house and they would follow me to school. So I'd have to get a lift to school because I couldn't walk because they'd follow me, which now as an adult, I think, why the fuck were they doing that? Like, what did they want out of me? I was just like 9. And then, they would offer parents of friends of mine money to say derogatory things about the family and stuff. And they followed us to Greece on holiday, and it was all, it was
really?
it was all very strange. And like, it got to one point when my dad, I remember going into this really fancy hotel, which we weren't staying at, but we went into this really fancy hotel, and I remember looking around like, this place is so much better than the place we're at. Like, why are we here? What's going on? And it was so dad could send a fax to his, I want to say agent, but I don't think he was his agent anymore because he wasn't at the BBC at this point. But he used to be his agent, a guy called Paul, who was a really nice guy. And he sent this fax because he knew that basically stuff was being tapped all the way back then in the 90s. Wow. And so he sent the fax from this really posh hotel so that would send them off the scent. So they would go and basically camp out at this really posh hotel on the other side of the island of Crete and leave us the fuck alone in our little dossel where we were staying. And it's mad, really, isn't it? Like, that's like some weird, like, James Bond thing to have to like send people off on another scent. So that kind of opened my eyes to the realities of the media and stuff like that. And then, 9/11, I became a footballer. I played for England for 5 years playing beach soccer. So we went all over the world. And I went to Israel and I played against Israel. And so I saw stuff there that didn't fit in with what I was told, what the media was telling me here. And so that was a big eye opener. And then, so I was quite big in the anti-war movement and going to protests and all that kind of stuff and marches and performing. So I was a musician at the time, performing at fundraising events for Palestine and stuff, because believe it or not, it didn't start on October 7th. And
wow,
and so then as a result of that, I kind of got another view to the censorship industry, basically, which it is, because I was posting stuff that I was doing, and it was just fundraising for kids in Gaza. And then I had this guy coming at me, because at this time I was working as a personal trainer for Virgin Active, because I've had a million jobs, mate. And this guy, who's a big pro-Israeli guy, started coming at me about this fundraising I was doing, and I was like probably quite wet behind the ears at this point, quite naive. I was like, what? I'm not doing anything wrong. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, you're funding terrorism. And I remember putting a picture up of these kids like holding these bags of school supplies and stuff, like, you know, pens and stuff, going, they don't look like terrorists, mate. And for some reason that sent the guy off the fucking edge. And so then he started trying to get me fired from Virgin. He went all the way to head office at Virgin to get me fired. He was threatening to bring him and his boys down to turn up and wait outside the gym for me when I finished work, which I found funny at the time, because it's like, I've worked in both of these places, and the two places I probably wouldn't turn up to fight someone is a building site and a gym, just full of fucking bodybuilders and PTs. It's like, but in the end, I had to get a restraining order against this guy. I had to get the police involved. And and it just went mad, mate. Yeah, and that was a real eye opener. And then COVID, basically, then that happened. And it was really odd, mate, because I was looking around. I was going, right, to my sort of anti-war friends, like, here we go, guys. Oh, you've all fucked off. You've all bought it. And they all bought it. And suddenly they were turning on me. And I was like, I've got to say, the friends I did not expect to lose over a fake pandemic were the ones that were conspiratorially minded. They were the ones I thought I'd keep. And in the end, it was people that were probably more, I don't like the term normie, but everyone uses it, but were in that sphere that I knew from playing football or ice hockey or whatever. They were the ones that were going, mate, have you seen this? You know, they were awakening to stuff, and that was quite strange. And those sort of anti-establishment punk rock people I was mates with were calling me a granny killer. And I was going, wow, this is crazy, you know. And then I ended up getting asked to speak, which I'd never, you know, I'd been a best man before and done a speech, but apart from that, I wasn't really doing speeches. I'd always spoke through music kind of thing at events. But I got asked to speak at a couple of these events across England in the real beginning of 2020, when you had like one man and a dog turning up. There was more police than protesters, you know, in those days.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I was all over my dad's emails, because I was running my dad's business at the time, like the bookshop and stuff. And so I was getting these emails saying, mate, we'd love you to speak. We've seen what you've been saying on social media. You've been really outspoken. You've been going on podcasts. You're the first name on the list. You know, it'd be great if you could come and speak. But obviously they wouldn't realize that I'd been having about 2 weeks worth of emails to dad's email saying, you're the first name on the team sheet. You're the first person we wanted to speak to. And it was funny because I wasn't offended by that. I was like, of course you're going to pick the OG before me. Of course you're like, that's fine. You know, but it was just funny that they would say that, you know, we
say
always
the
wanted
same
you.
thing, trying to blow wind up your ass. I'm like, no,
and the thing is, because, you know, to be fair, I got the ego beaten out of me as a kid. So I'm the last person to blow smoke up my ass because I'm not bothered. Like I'm like that, you know, Rudyard Kipling, you know, treat those two imposters just the same. You know, for anyone says positive, anyone says negative, whatever, it makes no odds to me, really. But yeah, then I did that, and then it just kind of just exploded, really, with the speech at Trafalgar Square like 5 years ago, and I just kind of went a bit mad on that one. And I remember my wife phoning me as I was driving back to Derbyshire. And she was like, I've seen the speech online. And I was like, oh, yeah. She goes, it's everywhere, mate. She goes, you did a fucking rap. And I went, I know. I don't know why I did that. It's not me. So she's finding it funny, obviously, because she knows me as this, you know, boring, almost middle-aged fart, suddenly starting to do some bloody rap. And I was like, you just, in the days before, I was just like, I'm just going to do something slightly different, you know, just why not? And it seemed to, you know, sort of come off. And then the Times got involved, the Times newspaper, and they got it deleted from social media, which I thought media's job was just to report the news. I didn't realize it was to control the narrative, but there we go. Obviously I do realize that. But then, they did a hit piece on me and my wife and kid and all this sort of stuff. And then my kid got kicked out of, she was 2, she got kicked out of nursery because I'd done this speech. And then someone tried to get child services on me because of my anti-vax views, and I had child services on the phone. And I was like, it was at that point I was like, oh no, I'm all in now. I'm all in now, because I will be, you know, friendly and affable and, you know, probably take a little bit more shit than I should at times, to kind of just keep calm and breathe and whatever. But if you come for the kids, I will bite your fucking nose off, was my sort of attitude.
Kids,
And so at that point, I just came out fighting, and that's where we are now, basically.
Oh, amazing, mate! Yeah, because I remember seeing some of your talks when the convid, as I call it, stuff was, well, most people call it, stuff was on, and I just thought, wow, look at that guy go. There was one in particular where you spoke with so much passion and so much fire, because you were talking about they're coming for our kids, and you sort of, you were in this real warrior energy about protecting kids, and it was so natural and authentic, Gareth. And I remember thinking, wow, that was really, really powerful, and I shared it with a lot of people. So it's kind of great to see that was almost your sort of graduation into being more of a public face. And on
Yeah.
that, Gareth, one thing I really do admire about you and your brother is that, given the sort of trailblazing that your dad's done and the reputation that he has, one thing I really admire about you and your bro is that you sort of show up as your own men and do it in your own way and in your own voice. So given that, where do you feel in terms of the work and the information? Where do you feel as though you've found your voice the most at this part in the journey?
I think it probably is down to having kids, being at the coalface in terms of that. Like, obviously my dad's got kids, but we're all grown up, and so he's not doing this. He's not doing the school run, and he's not talking to teachers, and he's not having to deal with that sort of stuff. Whereas obviously me and my brother are, and so we're a little bit more still, I guess, plugged into the matrix, for want of a better term. We're still kind of a bit more connected to it, and so I think for that reason we maybe can connect a little bit more with people that are new to this. Whereas my dad's been doing it for so long, he's talking to people about stuff that works in terms of taking people from that level of awareness to that level of awareness. Whereas we're all the way down here. We're dealing with we're talking to people every day that were waving flags for the Queen 4 years ago, and now are suddenly going, oh, hang on, the royal family aren't all that great, are they? No, mate. And so I think that's maybe where our level is in terms of that kind of stuff, because I think it's important. I think it's a numbers game, mate, if I'm honest. I think, when people say, how do we beat this? Well, it's a numbers game. If enough people say no, it's done. March 2020, when they locked down everything, there was enough people went, no, I'm not shutting my business. It would have ended immediately. It carried on until people grew enough of a spine to turn around and say no. And that was 2 years of damage done,
Agreed.
So I think that's probably our realm, I guess, at the minute, is trying to, I hate the term normie, but I keep using it. And I've used it a lot yesterday as well, which is a bit rubbish because I think it's a derogatory term. And I think we're all probably NPCs a little bit in our own kind of way in terms of how we're,
to a degree, I would agree with that to a degree,
to react to things. I mean, I walk in on myself sometimes with that, where I will see something and I will react in a way, and then I kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, whoa, you're meant to feel that. Yeah, okay, but for 5 seconds, you had me for 5 seconds. Well done, because the NPC part of me, which I think we all sort of have, is that kicked in. The simulation kicked in at that point, and then you sort of, oh, okay, I'm aware of it now, right? And I think, the more people that are aware of what's going on, the more people will oppose it. And that's probably why I'm more encouraged at the minute in terms of the digital ID stuff. Because in the early days of the Rona, I was watching people acting crazy, like acting totally crazy. And I didn't really understand it until I had an issue with my car about 6 months in. And so I had to take my car to the garage, and I'm sort of sat there and everyone's sort of, waiting outside. But I'd gone inside because, break the rules. And they had BBC News 24 on, and I sat there and I probably watched about 10 minutes of it, and I went, oh, that's why everyone's mental, because people were staying home and watching this, basically ticker tape of lies, essentially, that we're all going to die, and they were believing it. And I had a bit more sympathy for people then, sort of slightly less anger and more anger at the people perpetrating it, but more sympathy for the general public, really. But there was a lot of people doing lots of crazy things, and I'm not seeing that in terms of the digital ID stuff, because I don't think anyone genuinely, even the people saying it on the telly, I don't think anyone genuinely believes that digital ID can help stop mass immigration. So, because it's nonsense. So I think most people are actually starting to, well, one, say no to it, but also go, but I know that's nonsense. So why do they keep saying it? And then it's like, yeah, that's the first step. Okay, right, here we go. Now let's start looking at other steps, But I think sometimes if you walk up to someone and go, right, you do realize it's an all massive, globally orchestrated cult. Let's do blah blah. You've lost them at the word cult. I think a lot of people,
too much,
they're like,
isn't it? Yeah,
too much, yeah.
agreed.
And I totally get that. It's like, oh, whoa, okay, I shut down. You've said lots of words there, some of which I don't even know what that word is. Whereas if you come in with, on the ground level of, look, in what way is digital ID going to stop mass immigration? Well, it's not. Of course it's not. So why are they telling you it is then? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's maybe try and find that out. And then you kind of just, slowly take a little step. Like I found my technique, for want of a better word, during the whole COVID stuff was, if I would just basically go, bosh, this is what's going on. Like I said, people would go, what the fuck are you talking about? Whereas I found that if people come to their own conclusions, and they've come to that conclusion, they've not been told what to think. Because also, if I don't want, Fiona Bruce to tell me what to think, why should I tell other people what to think? So I had this situation with this guy that was running this burrito stall outside in Derby. And I was just making the odd comment about stuff. I was like, have you seen such and such, such and such? And he was like, yeah. And I was going, it's weird, isn't it? That is weird, isn't it? And he was going, yeah, well, yeah, I suppose that is quite weird. Yeah. Like various things that were happening. It's weird, isn't it? People collapsing in the street in China and India, but they're not collapsing in the street anywhere else. That is weird, isn't it? Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? Yeah. Cheers for my burrito. Off you go. And after about 5 or 6 days, in the end, he was like crowing over the top of the queue, going, here, have you seen this? Look at this. My wife sent me this on the phone. Look at this.
Brilliant.
He's going, that's weird, isn't it? And I was going, that is weird. And it was literally the amount of times that I was literally saying, that's weird, isn't it? And because what it was doing is it was just planting a seed, and he was then going away.
Planting seeds and like bringing the plane down gently.
Yeah, totally. Because I could have quite easily stood on a soapbox and fucking chewed his ear off for 25 minutes, half an hour about what was going on. And maybe he would have gone, oh yeah, I'll look into that, and maybe we'd have got to the same end. Or maybe he'd have just gone, fluoride stare, glazed over, like, yeah, I'm done. But he went on, and in the end he was, I'd love to know what he's up to now and what he's watching and what he's doing now. But he was, he went and found out for himself. And I think that's the thing. I don't think you can force people to awaken. I think that everyone has to do that naturally. Like everyone has to climb into the rabbit hole. You can't just chuck them in it. Like events will happen, like a 9/11 or like a 7/7 or whatever, that will kind of maybe drag people into it, or at least towards the rabbit hole bit. But I think people need to go in there willingly. I don't think you can drag people in there, because
and I totally agree, mate. And it's often got to be, you were talking there earlier just about the. You've really found your own voice at the grassroots level with school and young kids, because that's where you're at in your life at the moment. I think as well, in terms of what you've just said, is when you connect people with something that is really close to their heart, that really automatically draws them in, because it's like, hang on a minute, there's some high stakes here that I'm responsible for. So say, for example, 100%. Kids or employment or whatever it might be.
100%. And that was really funny, like in terms of, because, my surname's Icke. So I'd lost a lot of those kind of people that would be so massively pro-establishment. They wouldn't be my friends anyway, even long before Rona. But, I had some mates that would share probably different views to me, but, how blokes are. It's like, yeah, Icke is off on one again. Anyway, what you having? Like, not bothered really. Everyone's got a different view. And, then you align on what you maybe talk about football or music or whatever. And I had a few mates like that. Their wives hated me, but obviously the people that are my mates are fine. So when the jab rollout happened, they were like first in line, mate. They were first in line, and they were saying to me, "Oh God, yeah, my wife's in my ear about you not getting it." And I'm like, "Well, what does it matter to her? Like, whatever." But then when it came, when they lowered the age and they started rolling them out to kids, like some of my mates were messaging me, because the guys by this point were sort of a bit more on my side. They'd already had 2 or 3 jabs, but they were a bit more on my side. And so they were messaging me going, here, you'll like this. We got a letter from the school about, Nipper being jabbed, and my wife's told them to jog on, that they're coming nowhere near. And I was like, but I was a granny killer when I refused it. And it's funny, isn't it, that as a parent, it's like, I'll roll my arm up, and you can do what you want to me, but you don't go near the kids. And so I think the children are the Achilles heel of the establishment, really, to be honest, because they target them so much.
I was just going to say that, Gareth. That's why they go for them, isn't it? I mean, as your dad and many other commentators and everybody at Ickonic has said, that's why they're going for the kids. So like the transhumanist conversation, it's like, look, I can do this with my computer just by thinking about it, and it's going to make me superhuman. Bollocks! It's going to send you in the opposite direction. But kids, they've got no perspective. It's like people. I mean, so I was 53 yesterday. So thankfully, I'm old enough to remember a time where there wasn't really much of that stuff, and I'm guessing you can as well.
Yeah,
but
totally.
for say like but say for your daughters, or like for my partner's two children who are 12 and 10. Although thankfully, she's completely and utterly brought them up, as awakening as possible. So they haven't really been drawn into that. But for the majority of young kids, they come into that, and that's just their normal. They've got no other datum line at all. And so I completely agree with your point there that, they go for the kids, and that's why we have to be like lions and lionesses to protect them.
Well, they're the adults of the future, aren't they? And this is a long drawn out plan over decades and generations and generations to get to the end. But like for me, it's funny because I used to read bedtime stories to the kids, as you do. Now my oldest, she's 7. She asks for a true imagination story, which makes me laugh. But so I would tell her stories about when I was younger, and it's funny because have you ever watched Bluey? TV show called Bluey.
No.
It's a cartoon. No. Now, it's about dogs that all basically talk, and there's no humans in it, and it's made by the Australian government and the BBC. So I have no doubt there's some subliminal shite in there. But at the same time, the dad, Bandit, right, he's dad goals, right? If I could be a dad, I'd be Bandit from Bluey, right? And he's talking about stuff to his kids, and they're looking at him like, what? Like, this is mad. And he's going, it's the 80s, mate. Because it's set in Australia. He's like, it was the 80s. Like, you didn't wear helmets on a bike. There was no, when you're on a trampoline, it didn't have netting around it. Like, they're talking about all these things. And the kids are just like, this is mad. He's like, it's the 80s. But I find myself doing it with my eldest. So I'll tell her stories. And she's there like, eye open. Like, what? I was like, mate, it was the 80s, Law. It was the 80s. You could do what you wanted. You could do what you wanted. There was no time to be home. Come home when the street lights come on. And you'd roll in at like 10 o'clock and go, I think the streetlights are broken. What, in the whole town, Gaz?
Yeah.
But no one had a mobile phone, and no one was frightened of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was probably wrong uns left, right, and centre. But you just didn't have that threat. And people had left their doors wide open. People left the keys in the car in the 80s, in the ignition, and no one nicked it. And, you say that now and people would look at you like, what? It's like, mate, the 80s are not that long ago. Like, I'm not 110. I've been cycling to work on a penny farthing. It wasn't that long ago when you didn't have this stuff. I mean, sure, you'd have probably areas of London or areas of New York that would, high crime rates and whatever. But generally, people just had a bit more respect for each other. And I think that's the main thing I think that we've lost. Because, if you respect one another, you respect their privacy, you respect their right to vote for whoever they want, worship whoever they want, love whoever they want, whatever. You have that just respect to allow people to be. You don't blow kids' legs off in Gaza if you have respect for other human beings. And that's the thing. It's like, it seems as humanity, we've sort of lost all respect for each other. And that's how these horrendous things are allowed to happen.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, because it's a conversation like my partner, she's in her mid-40s, and a lot of her mates are, and we often have a similar conversation, Gareth, where we were like, exactly what you've just said. God, yeah, do you remember when we were like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12? Look, I was fortunate. I mean, yes, growing up like in a big city centre is different. But if you were someone like me who I grew up near Carlisle from the age of 5, and it was just safe as you like, really backward but beautiful, right
Yeah.
on the edge of the Lake District, and safe as you like. And it was the same thing, yeah. To come back when it gets dark, and you were just like back after dark, and it's like, well, it wasn't dark when I set off; it's just dark now. All
Yeah.
the nonsense excuses you would come out
Yeah.
with. We
But
would say the
it was
same
a
about
simpler
how
it was a
amazing
simpler
it
time
was
though,
looking
mate.
back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, how
It
amazing
was.
it was that our parents would let us go out. But I think one of the key things in terms of how all this is happening at the moment, Gareth, is that because of these blooming things and screens and pads and stuff, yes, they are useful, admittedly, but because people have become literally like,
Zombies, yeah.
limpets, zombies to them, it's taken away that natural element of our souls and our brains and our energetic field where we interact with people. And there was that sense of, my folks are like in their late 70s and early 80s. And they've been saying this for the last like 25 years or so, just how they can see that eroding away from even in the sort of rural town that they live in, that sense of interaction with neighbours looking out for each other, people just knocking on just to say like, is everything okay, can I get you anything, especially with the older people.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen anymore. So people have become massively desensitized. And then, of course, we've got non-stop propaganda because the lunatics run the asylum, unfortunately. So they control the media, they control the news, they control the money and everything. So, there are so many people out there that think what's going on in Palestine is actually warranted. And you're like, what? Really?
It's mad. The thing is, every relationship has a conduit now. Like, and I'm not anti-technology. We're chatting like this from other sides of the country.
It's
That's
useful.
great. But that's most relationships now. So in my day when I was a kid, what did you need? A ball and a wall, basically, and it was fine. Jumpers for goalposts,
Yeah,
whatever. Or if you would create a
yeah,
game, climbing trees and stuff, you would use your imagination. You would have to create characters, and you would be thinking, and you'd be being creative and being artistic in many ways. Now all that stuff is created for you digitally, and it's on a game or whatever. And so now when kids are playing, I'm just playing with my mates. It's like, yeah, but you're not. I mean, my kids are too young for this, but neighbors' kids and stuff do this. They're playing with their mates, and like, but you're not. You're in your house on your own. They're just
yeah.
they're just in their house on their own, and you're connected through a PlayStation or whatever else. That's not playing with your mates. It's it has its place. I get it, but wouldn't it be great if your mate just came round and you just sat next to each other and played FIFA or whatever?
Yeah,
So at least there's a
yeah,
real relationship there, as opposed to and I get it. You can play against people on the other side of the world and that sort of stuff. I get it. I'm not anti-technology in that sense, but it's kind of got in the way of everything now, where
definitely.
and COVID took it to another level in terms of everyone suddenly started working from home and doing everything through Zoom. So suddenly people weren't going into work and having that interaction. I did it. I up until recently, I only came into the studio one day a week. The rest of the time I was working remotely, and it was great because it meant I got more time with my wife and kids and stuff. But at the same time, it's like, now you need to get out and have those proper physical interactions with people. I think, I'm loving this
Definitely.
conversation, but I'd love it even more if we were sat in a snug in the back room of a pub with a couple of mics and a beer.
Well,
It would be a
yeah,
different
yeah,
conversation.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that. And connected to that point is my partner. She really and I having brought up 2 children herself, I'm like she's warranted to say this. I'm probably not so much because I've never had kids, even though I've always thought the same thing. It's like when she sees a parent using a screen as a childminder with a little baby 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, instead of giving the kid some attention, it drives her nuts because
Yeah,
they're such formative years, and it's essential that the relationship, the bond between the parent and the child is being deepened. But she sees it all the time, and she sees people in her kids' school community do it, and it drives her up the bloody wall. But unfortunately, it's creating children of today who will become, as you said earlier, the adults of tomorrow, for whom all this semi-transhumanist programming just becomes the norm. So they're so much easier to attack when and to bluff when they get older. So
yeah.
it kind of on that note, Gareth, given that you do have two young children, what advice would you give to any parents who are listening to this with young kids in terms of how to equip them, or how to best equip their children with the wisdom to be able to navigate all this nonsense when they get older?
$1 million question, mate. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, we send our kids to school with a tiny little village primary school, but we will homeschool from secondary school. So, I mean, hopefully we'll have kicked this whole thing over by then. But
Yeah.
in terms of the critical race theory, gender theory, all this sort of bullshit, like we're not having any of that crap. So we'll homeschool from them because my wife works at home and she's a teacher by trade. Like that's what she is.
Oh, wow.
So we I'm under no illusions. Like we're lucky in that sense, and a lot of people aren't in that position. And I think that's something that's been orchestrated for a long, long time. Like sometimes you see stuff online, and it's like this was Middle America in the 1950s, where you had like one guy who maybe worked in a garage, and he had a detached house, and his wife was a housewife, and they had two kids, and you're like, no one can afford that now. So suddenly the wife's got to work as well. So suddenly the kids are either being raised by a childminder, or they're being raised by a screen, like you say. And so it's difficult to say to people, you can't do that. And it's like, well, if I don't, people will say, if I don't put the telly on, then I can't get on with work that I need to do. So it is a difficult thing. And I'm lucky in that sense. But it's tough, mate. It's tough. I think all you can do is kind of try and be as honest as you can, like with your kids in terms of what's going on. But there has to be a little bit of a limit to that as well, I think. I know people that just tell their kids everything, and they've got terrified freaking kids. And then you've got, but then you've got others that shield their kids from absolutely everything. And you look at them and you think, mate, when your kid gets to 16 or 17 or 18 and sees the real world,
function in the world?
They're not going to. Exactly. So it's about trying to find that balance. And I guess, to speak to parents watching this, only you know your kids as well as you do. No one knows your kids better than you. So, you can then judge that level of it. Like I'm honest with my kids, but at the same time, like my kids don't know what COVID is. If you say COVID to them, they'd look at you like, that's a weird word. Like we encountered one guy, I think, with a mask during lockdown. I remember my eldest saying, why has that guy got that on his face? And I went, because he's an idiot. Which I probably could have come up with a slightly more intelligent response, but it was what I was thinking. And
there's a lot of truth in it, to be fair.
Well, yeah, she didn't question it. She just sort of
well, kids are wise, so there you go.
Yeah, so but because I was like, well, I'm not going to terrify my kids into thinking that all this stuff's going on. I'm not doing that. But at the same time, we do tell them that things are going on in the world, bad things. And, when they act spoiled and stuff, just say, look, we do tell them, we don't show them the bloody images from Gaza, of course, but we do explain to them that there are people that, live in rubble and alone, raising, the older brother, raising the younger brother and stuff, because the parents have been killed. Like, look, and they kind of look at you like, what? And it's like, look, you've got a really privileged existence here. Come on. Let's have some appreciation and let's, whatever. And so there's some honesty there to make them humble in that sense, but not to the point where you terrify them. And because the world is a dark place a lot of the time, but it doesn't have to be. But we also get them out in nature as well, mate. Again, we're lucky. We don't live in the city. We live in the sticks.
Such good medicine. Yeah.
It's great. And, and they love it. Like my oldest, she's a bit of a hippie anyway, in that sense. Like as soon as she gets home, she'll kick the shoes and socks off and just run out into the garden and just,
awesome.
Be grounded. Whereas my youngest is a bit more, feisty, angry type. So different in that sense, but they're quite connected sort of spiritually anyway, with nature and things like that. And obviously we're lucky in that sense because we live in the countryside, but that's another part of it, I think, to stay connected with stuff, and also to build a tribe of people around you. Because I think that this is something that's quite important. It's like, I was talking to Neil Oliver the other day, and he was saying that he was interviewing these very wealthy guys that they're all about investments and they've made millions and whatever. And he was saying that he was asking them, what do I need to be doing? Basically, because the way the world's going, do I need to be buying gold? Do I need to be buying silver? Like, what do we do? And he said that they, to a man, basically said, no, you just need to build relationships, mate. That's what you need to do. You need to build relationships with the local farmer, and these are people that are on the stock exchange, friends with the local farmer, friends with a local plumber, with a local builder, and build these relationships and go like, right, who's bringing what to the table? I think that's important as well, because when you do that, then, with like-minded people, in theory, like-minded people have like-minded kids. So then your kids have these relationships with people that are on the same level, because that's another thing. As your kids get older and they go to play at their mate's house, well, what's going on at their mate's house? What are their parents into?
Yeah.
What are they being exposed to? You don't know, do you? So it's tough. So that would be the only advice I'd give. But I'm
It's a great one.
7-year-old kid and a 4-year-old kid. I'm still learning. Do you know what I mean? I'm 3-4 years behind your partner in terms of knowledge of it, and no one gives you a manual for parenting. And all kids are different too. That's the thing.
I was just going to say, and it's such a unique experience, not just with every family or every parent, but with every kid as well. Because, my partner, her two, they're so similar yet very different at the same time. And I remember a little while ago, she was getting really concerned about something that was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was getting concerned about something that was really going on in terms of what was going on out there in the world that was going to affect the kids with school and this, that, and the other, and what other family members, things less about the family members and more about the friends, as you said earlier. And I was like, you know the answer to this, really, don't you? And she said, well, I went, just trust your wisdom and trust the kids' wisdom. I said, you're such a great mum. And I said, you equip those kids in a way that I wish that 99.9% of other kids out there have that level of trust and respect, but also protection at the same time. And at the end of the day, they just need to go out. You've got to trust that their own hearts and souls and their own inner wisdom, their own souls, because, none of us are staying here. We're just here for a ride for a few decades. That the answers will come to them, and we've got to let them make their own mistakes, as we all did when we were younger as well.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you shared, Gareth, was really powerful, because I see a direct reflection of that in terms of how my partner shows it with her kids. And she says exactly the same things. It's like, am I doing a good job? Am I doing this right? I mean, it's not about whether you're doing a good job or whether you're doing it right. It's like, are you doing this from your heart and soul, clearly with the best interests of the children at heart, but without trying to smother them, informing them, but as you said earlier as well, not terrifying them with just how dark the world is, because it is a really, really dark place. Now, there's a lot of light and there's a lot of good. I think we've got to remember that as well. But I think
it's about not being too hard on yourself as well. It's difficult. We've all been there as parents where you've not quite got it right. You've not quite judged the situation, correctly, and it's tough. But then, like you said, it's where you're coming from, what place you're coming from in terms of from your heart. Like I remember we've got a photo that I look at occasionally, and it's Elora when she's probably maybe one, maybe not quite one, but she's basically just in a nappy and she is sobbing. Like her face is like the tears streaming, dribbling. It's on her chest. She's just literally sobbing. That's because we wouldn't let her eat a battery. Do you know what I mean? She was trying to put a battery in her mouth, and so my wife grabbed it quickly, like, what the hell? Where's that from? Blah, blah. And she sobbed because she wasn't allowed to eat a battery that would have killed her. So actually, every now and then I'll look at that photo and it will just make me chuckle, because you're just like, that's parenting in a nutshell. It's just mad. Like for about 30 seconds, she freaking hated us, but actually, what you've done is just you've saved their life. It's
literally saved your life. Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, that is funny. Look, it's a lovely what you've just shared earlier about going out in nature, Gareth, which is something that we do, and my partner's kids absolutely love as well. Living in Wilmslow, just south of Manchester, got access to so much beautiful countryside around here, and we're in Derbyshire quite a bit as well. I used to live in Matlock.
Oh, lovely.
A few years ago, yeah. So there's just so many places that we go around there. The stone circles, we live around there, like Nine Ladies, and what's the other one?
You got Arborough a bit further up.
Arborough, yeah, Arborough. Yeah. So we spend a lot of a lot of time walking around there. Well, my partner and I really, but we want to take our kids around there a lot more next year. But again, there's just so much. They've got a static caravan in Llanbedrog in Wales, and it's so beautiful.
Lovely
around there. And I've been there a few times. And it's a lovely segue into I love your channel on YouTube, The Walk, which is
thanks,
exactly
mate.
that. Yeah. Because that documentary you did on Ickonic, was it earlier this year or last year, about the history of the Industrial Revolution? Was amazing.
Pathways
I
to the
loved
Past.
it. Yeah, that was so good, and I love The Walk, and especially the Cromford ones, because obviously we're living in Matlock, and a former partner of mine many years ago, she used to run one of the restaurant cafes in Cromford Mill.
Really. I love that place, mate. I love it. We go all the time. My kids love it as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny though with that is like after the whole COVID stuff, like during the lockdowns and things, I'd get up early in the morning because I'd carry on obviously doing stuff. Everyone else is asleep. And I was watching these videos on YouTube of these explorers that were going around, like walking old railway lines and canal paths and, trying to find old stuff in the woods and whatever. And I loved it and I got into it. And then we all came back into going into the studio and stuff. And then I was filming a show on a Monday. And then that show stopped. And so I kind of had a Monday free, I guess. And my wife, Gemma, was like, look, you need to do something that's out the rabbit hole, like something that's just going to be fun. She was like, you love walking. She said, why don't you just get yourself a camera and just go and do what those guys do that you used to watch in lockdown sort of thing.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, go on then, I will. And so I started doing it. Mate, I went straight down a rabbit hole because I started going down these lead mines and stuff, which were a bit spicy, to be fair. Some of them were a bit more spicy than others.
Have you ever had any near misses where you've nearly fallen down a mine shaft or something?
I've had a few silly moments, yeah. And there was one where I nearly got stuck in a lead mine in terms of crawling. And when my wife saw the footage, she had a bit of a go at me, to be honest. But because you're like 200 meters underground, and I was literally like, it was a bit stupid, really. But when you get into some of these and you look up, and it's like the story is they're made basically by malnourished guys in the 1700s with pickaxes, and you're looking, you're like, that's a freaking cathedral, man. Like these are enormous, some of them, and
phenomenal.
Even just some of the walls, like they say that they're called deads, which are basically apparently like where you would go down a lead seam, you'd exhaust the lead seam, and then all the spoil that you dug out, you would build up a wall. Well, that's bullshit. These are like stones, and then they're dry stone walls underground, like 200 meters underground, but they are just perfection, mate. And it's like, no way. And some of the guys I walk with, they're not into our, I mean, there's one guy that's into our sort of realm, but the rest of them are not. It's not their thing. Yeah. And even they're like, nah, no way. Like it sent me down the whole, the timeline is a lie. I don't believe what we're told in terms of when things happened and things like that.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Gareth, because I've just had Guy Anderson on the show, who I know that you know. He's a great guy and cool guy, and this is what as you know, a key part of the research that he's been doing is the timelines don't fit.
Yeah, they don't fit at all. It's some of this stuff that we find underground, they couldn't build it now. With all the technology we've got now and all the heavy machinery, they couldn't recreate this stuff now. And they were doing it 200 meters underground with a pickaxe. Not having it. I'm not having it. Yeah, it's crazy. But I love it, mate. I love it, that sort of stuff. And what's funny is I get hunches sometimes. So like I've got one today. So I went out and did a walk with Gemma. I've edited it. I've not put it up yet, but my wife joined me for a walk for the first time. And it's up in the Goyt Valley, which is like stunning area of North Derbyshire. And there was this old stately home that they knocked down in the 1930s, and it had this big like burial ground with it, which is all still there. And there's this memorial which you can go in, and it's all painted to the Virgin Mary and stuff. It's like it's in the middle of nowhere. But I've got this hunch that there's remains of an old coal mine. So I'm going to go there after work. I'm going to take an hour drive out of Derby up there and just fumble around in the woods to try and find an old coal mine, which is, people watching this will probably think, what a prat. But do you know what? The joy that I get when I find something, mate.
Honestly, mate, it's my idea of heaven. It's one of the reasons I love the walk so much. Is that when I was a kid, I don't know where it came from, but I was fascinated by, like, I would see the route of like an old road that wasn't a road anymore, and the route of an old railway line, and the remains of like an old factory or something. And my imagination as a kid would just go wild, wondering what it used to be like, how
I
it was
love it.
built, how it was constructed. So, you know, to me, what you've just shared there about driving an hour to go and find the remnants of an old, was it coal mine? I think you said
An old coal
um,
mine, yeah, because these
an old
people
coal
had.
mine.
I mean,
I couldn't think of anything more exciting to do after work. Honestly,
I know. Well, what was amazing is when we went up there, we started chatting to this old boy in his 80s,
yeah,
and he, because everyone's on technology now. I was going. So this was this, and he's, oh no, this was a cottage, and he said, and that was a well. He said, I dug that out recently. He was a fit 80-year-old. He's like, I dug that out recently. I was like, really? And he went, here, and he gets his phone out, and he's scrolling like that, and he had all these old pictures, and so that I could recreate the picture to how the scene was now. But what made them even more spectacular, these pictures, is they had people in them, and the people are looking at the camera, and these are like from the 1920s, if not earlier, actually, some of them. And it's like, oh my God, that just brings these walks to life that you can just,
yeah,
and it goes to show you don't know who's walked before you at any point. It's mad, really. But I absolutely love doing that. And the other side of it as well is like, I think part of me thinks we're almost on the road to year zero a little bit again in terms of destruction of history, destruction of old buildings, the amount of old buildings that get knocked down and
agreed.
replaced with steel and glass shite. Um,
Yeah,
there's this, I've done 204 walks now, 204
mm,
episodes, and 6 of the things don't exist anymore. I've only been doing it for 2 years, these walks, but yeah, 6 of the 204 things don't exist anymore. They're gone,
yeah. I was
eradicated from
really
history.
sad to see that old train station on the edge of Derby that you did.
Oh,
You went back on
Friargate,
it. Yeah,
gutted,
yeah.
mate.
It was heartbreaking. It's like going to be houses soon, isn't it? I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
gutted. And the other
it's
one, there's
heartbreaking.
the big one was Brinsley headstock. So Brinsley's in Nottinghamshire. There were these
Yeah,
big wooden headstocks that date from, I think it was about 1840, and they were the last ones left in Britain.
yeah,
They were used because D.H. Lawrence's dad used to work in that mine, and so in the film adaptation of I think it's Sons and Daughters, that they use Brinsley headstocks, and you can see them still working, and they're amazing. The pub across the road's called the Headstocks. They fucking chopped them down. They
oh,
just chopped them down. And I turned up and I went, luckily I'd already done an episode there and filmed them and done all
yeah,
this sort of stuff. And I was like, what the heck? And it was the council. And then there was such an uproar that they then changed their story and said, oh no,
yeah.
it was an accident. Because everyone accidentally cuts down
Of
some,
course it was.
old
Yeah,
headstocks
as
and
you
then
do.
chops them up. So they're now having to rebuild them, and everyone's celebrating. I'm like, but it's not them, is it?
Yeah, the authenticity's gone, the
Gone.
originality's
And
gone.
it's
It's
not the
like it's
originals. Yeah.
it's like that classic scene out of Only Fools and Horses where the things I'd blooming like
Oh
a
yeah,
hundred
triggers
shanks.
broom. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And the thing is, I tell you what, mate, and this is just like, I don't know because I'm not part of that Nottinghamshire council. I'm not privy to it. But if I was a gambling man, I'd say they cut it down because they want to build houses there because it was prime real estate,
yeah,
which it is. And then the backlash was such that they've kind of gone, oh, bollocks. Okay, fine,
yeah.
rebuild them then. But you're like I say, it's like, yeah, like it's triggers broom. It's not the same thing. So who's going to
It's
go and
not.
visit these 1840 headstocks? Well, no one, because they ain't 1840. They've gone and
Yeah,
got the wood from, I don't know, Jewson's or whatever, like down the road. It's
yeah.
yeah, it's
They
gutting how
might,
much stuff gets
well,
destroyed.
might as well just go ahead and build the houses after all, because yeah, the whole the energy and the authenticity, because as we know, the energy of that place is still connected to the structures that are still there, because of
Oh
course
yeah,
everything is energy, and you take that portion of the energy away, and then you bring back the energy of something that's brand new. It does
it's not
not
the
have the
same.
same effect.
Nah, and the thing is, you can, and again, like my mates, like I said, that aren't really into this realm, they will attest to this. Like you do feel stuff in these places,
Yeah, you
and
do.
they don't really understand why. They're like, it is a bit weird, but like some of the places, if we go and visit where there's been like really severe battles, or we went into an old stately home, which is mad because it's still got everything left in it.
Mm.
But there was a guy that was attacked about 10 years ago by burglars, and they killed his dog in front of him and they tied him up. He was in his 80s. It was horrendous. And then he died like 6 months later, not from his injuries, but I guess probably from a fucking broken heart, be honest. They caught the people that did it and banged him up, thankfully. But we went into that house, and that shit, like that attack, I'm not kidding, was still going on in that house, mate, in terms of the energy. It was just horrendous. You could feel it. And,
Definitely.
you know, some people think that's a little bit woo and a bit hippie, but I always say to them, like, we've all walked in a room after someone's had a row, and you know it's happened. Like, you can walk in and just go, have you had a row? Because the atmosphere is such. And if you think you can pick that up after a little bit of a Barney between, you know, husband and wife, imagine what you're going to pick up after, I don't know, 10,000 people are slain at you know, on a battle site. You know, it doesn't matter how long ago it was. That stuff is still, you can still feel it.
Yeah, you absolutely can, because I've had a real life example of that myself, kind of accidentally, but not almost. There was a place I went to go and look at a house not too far away from here, and as soon as I drove on, this is about a year and a bit ago, just over at the west side of Wilmslow. And as soon as I drove onto it was a new build housing estate, and as soon as I drove on, I was like, "Oh, what is that?" And I just could not put my finger on it. My partner came to have a look at it. I didn't tell her anything about this at all, and immediately she said, "Did you feel?" Like she said to me a little while after, she said, "Did you get a weird feeling when you went round there?" I went, "Tell me more about that." And she went, "No, it just feels like death. Like there's a really strong feeling of death there." And I was like, "Interesting." And then there was a guy who actually lived, who was renting a house on that estate, who I knew. And he moved out, and he said, and again, I never told him any of this. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm out of that place." He said, "Even though it was like a new build estate and the house was nice that I was renting and everything," he said, "I don't know, there was just a really horrible, dark energy." And he's not like, he's just what I was saying before, like what we'd call a normie, for want of a better expression. And even he said, "Yeah, there was just a really dark energy in that place. And I just don't know what it was." He said it was just, it just felt really, and he said something like almost like death. So it just goes to show 3 people independently have been in the same tiny little area of land and felt the same thing. And we know from, it's been proven in modern science, Gareth, isn't it, that at best, and your dad talks about this loads and loads and loads and loads, is that at best we see 0.0003 of the known energy spectrum. And that's the known energy spectrum. So there's so much stuff out there that we can't necessarily see with our eyes, but from here, from our soul, heart, soul essence, or whatever you want to call it, actually really can tune into that. And, on an everyday level, people get it when they go around, if you go in house hunting, people get it. You walk in one house and you think, it looks really nice, got really nice fixtures and fittings, but don't know, just
Not
something about
it.
this place. Yeah, and then you go in,
with Alton Towers. You know Alton Towers? There's an area of Alton Towers where you
we're going in about a week and a half,
Well, so when you go on the cable cars, if they're running, it goes over those gardens. Do you know the bit? And they've got the old structures, and it's quite a big like ridge down. I always, even as when I was younger, I never liked it really there. And so when they put like a House of Horrors thing at Alton Towers, that didn't surprise me. I thought, right, you've already got the atmosphere for it, be honest.
Yeah.
Well, that particular garden area that you go over, I always found that creepy and a bit, I just don't like it. Like, it's pretty, like the buildings are nice and the flowers and all that sort of stuff, but I don't like it. And then I was doing an explore not far from Alton Towers along an old railway and an old canal. So I got a bit of history about the area, and it was quite big during the English Civil War, actually, which I hadn't realised, that there was a stronghold there at Alton Castle and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, even before that, in the 10th century, there was a battle between the Kingdom of Mercia and I don't know if it was the Danes. I should know this really, but I can't remember. But it was the Kingdom of Mercia versus someone anyway. It might have even been them fighting the Kingdom of Wessex. Whoever it was, they had a scrap, right? And there were no survivors. They literally butchered each other to death, and there was no survivors. So then a period of days went by, and I don't know if people sent scouts out or whatever. Anyway, people came across this site of just dead soldiers. Everyone's just dead. Every single one is dead. And it's known as Slain Hollow, which makes sense given what happened there. That's that freaking ridge in Alton Towers. Yeah. And you're like, now I get it. Now I get why I always found this place a bit creepy and a bit kind of don't get a nice vibe from it. Because if you've got such a horrendous thing, even though it's, so long ago. It's going to be in the atmosphere, isn't it, man?
Yeah, it stays. Yeah, absolutely, it stays, and I love stories like that because it's kind of creepy but really, really fascinating.
And it's what England was built on. I mean, what's England? Is it 928? Something like that. 929, 928. Yeah, England was formed. So, it was as a result of those battles that that England came to be formed. So it's crazy.
Killing fields everywhere, yeah.
Oh, mate, everywhere.
In a relatively small area of land as well.
Yeah, I mean, England's tiny, isn't it? It's tiny. And where we are, like in the Midlands, Bosworth is, like Battle of Bosworth's half an hour away.
Yeah.
The Battle of Wakefield's probably an hour and 20 minutes away. And you've got all these other pockets of battles. That Slane Hollow one's probably 45 minutes away from where I am. So many pockets of these. And these are just the ones that we know about.
That we know about, yeah, absolutely. Well, again, the story I just told about that housing estate, like for three of us individually, without saying a thing to any of us, to all pick up on exactly the same thing, just goes to show that.
Something would have gone off there, mate. Whereabouts was it? I bet you'd be able to find it.
Yeah, it's Wilmslow Park West. It is, but
Wilmslow Park West. Where's that?
Let me have a little look. So it's just to the west of Wilmslow itself. I'm just going to look on the actual. Wilmslow Park, and it was just off. There's a road called Dean Row Road. Excuse my accent; that probably came out really bad. But it's a fairly new build development that was only done about three years ago. And it's beside. There's a road called Dean Row Road, and then coming off it, there's a lane called Brown's Lane. Right. And when you look at it on like Google Maps or whatever, you'll see some just to the right where they intersect. To the right of that, you'll see like a load of streets and stuff, and there's quite a lot of green as well. That's that new development. And it was in that area.
Got you. Because there was an RAF site there, wasn't there? I'm seeing that. I'm struggling to find.
Right.
I'm struggling to find a battle, but that doesn't mean that it's just not happened at a time that
Yeah, or as you said earlier, maybe it wasn't even recorded. But
that's it. Yeah. Again, like what is our history as well?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and that brings on a really, really interesting question. I know we've got to finish in a minute. I feel like we've barely got warmed up, and I've still got about 800 questions here.
Well, we can do it again, mate. We'll do it again.
Yeah, please. Nice. Yeah. I'd love to, Gareth. Yeah, I would love to. But that does bring us on to, just as a closing point. I love it's. It's funny how these synchronicities work. I've been watching a series which you've probably come across called Europa: The Last Battle. That is on Odyssey. Tells an alternative version of what happened in terms of Germany from the start of the 1900s through the Second World War. What was really going on with the Bolsheviks, the Jewish Bolsheviks, and what happened in Russia, and then the sweep of communism right down through, or the attempted sweep of communism right down through Europe. And I was talking to Guy Anderson, who we mentioned earlier. We, on the podcast, I've just launched the episode that I did with him. I launched it last weekend. And I think it was either in that or off camera. We were basically saying what a conversation that would be for another time, to look at an alternative interpretation of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich, because the history is always told by the winners and the victors, and I don't want to upset anyone because obviously it's a very, very sensitive subject. But I watched the conversation you had with him fairly recently, and lo and behold, he said to you, "Which dead person would you love to have a conversation with?" And you only went and said Hitler, and I thought that is incredible.
I want to get to the bottom of it, mate.
Yeah, Guy and I had actually just been talking about that, and then I watched your episode the next day, and I was like, "Who knew? Who knew that you actually said the same thing?" Well, but yeah, I'm the same.
I mean, I'm not one of those that thinks he's a good guy. I do actually. I know of people that think he's a good guy. Yeah. I don't think that for 1 minute. But at the same time,
grey, though, eh?
But at the same time, like you said, yeah, the history's told by the victor for a start. but it's also, what was he connected into? Was he just a puppet? Was he just playing a character? Was he just the bogeyman? Because the whole way through my schooling, like, he is basically the biggest villain in the history of the planet, isn't he? That's how, people go into your Maos and your Pol Pots and whatever else you want to go into. But certainly in English schooling, he was the goblin of all goblins, wasn't he? So I'd love to just sit down and have a conversation of what the hell was going on. What was that all about?
Absolutely the same. I mean, if I could put myself in a time machine, I'd actually love to go back and find out. And for anyone watching, I just want to be clear: I'm not saying that I'm approve of Hitler or anything like that before people start lampooning this conversation. But what we are saying is question everything. Question absolutely everything. That's what this show's about. That's what Ickonic's about. That's what anybody who's interested in the awakening process, that is really the core mantra, is question everything. And as Gareth said, I don't for one second think he was all a good guy. I'm very sure he did some really horrendous things, which, when you're in that position, you probably would. But I would love to hear an alternative take on what was actually going on, even before then, through like the history of Germany, as it became really prosperous and successful, why it was squashed, and then why he built up the country again. But again, was he a puppet? Was he working against them? Was he working with them? Was he a fall guy? Was he a stooge? We need to find this information out. We really do need to know what's going on, because it has such it does inform the conversation that's going on with Israel at the moment. We're not going to get into that because we're going to have to finish in a second. But I think it's really, really, really important that whatever we think we know and whatever we've been told, we've got to question it continually.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And also, I think, everyone will rightly say never again. Never again should anything like that be allowed to happen. Never again, never again. And then, a lot of those people that say that then support it when it happens to people that they don't agree with. But either way, never again. It's like, well, if you're going to stand there and say never again, wouldn't it be good to know exactly what you're referring to? Exactly what happened, exactly why it was allowed to happen and how it happened. Because only when you're armed with that knowledge, not necessarily from a textbook or whatever, but actually from the horse's freaking mouth. Because this would be my prerequisite of a conversation with Hitler, is he's got to be honest. He's not allowed to gaslight me into thinking something differently. He's got to sit there and it's got to be 100% gospel truth, whatever it is. That's the prerequisite for the conversation. Because only then, once you've got all that information, can you spot the telltale signs of things coming again and things happening again. So if we mean never again, then we need to know what we're talking about.
Yeah. One of my favourite modern series has been the remake of Battlestar Galactica from 2003, the Ronald D. Moore one. And one of the mottos in it towards the end is, all this has happened before and all this will happen again, unless we find out the real core truth. And also, it really requires us as well to stop reacting and stop taking sides and actually come back to our own truth and remember that, we're all connected to each other and we're all playing out a story ultimately at the end of the day.
Exactly that. And it comes down to respect as well. Have some respect for yourself, respect those people around you. And that would be a start.
Yeah, it would, especially with what's going on in the world. But anyway, Gareth,
mate,
we've got to end there because I know you need to go shortly. Before we end, I've got 3 quick fire questions for you. So the first one is, what are you most excited about right now?
In a weird kind of way, I'm up for this battle on digital ID. I kind of feel like it's one of those things. Like, we can sit in a reactionary state, waiting for something to be announced, and oh no, what they're going to do? Oh no, that puts all the power in their hands. In my eyes, I'm like, if we know they want to bring in this draconian shite. We know they want it, so we know they're going to come at us through various ways. Okay, well now they're out and they've actually admitted it and they've said it. Good. Well, let's stop pretending then, and let's fight it and defeat it. So that, as weird as it sounds, I'm actually up for it.
I love that. Such a great response, and that was one of the many questions that I wanted to ask you. But we'll do that another time, because I think that's a half an hour conversation, just that one subject. But yeah, I'd love that, and I totally agree with that, because I've heard you say, and I've heard a few other people say. But see it when I just go around talking to people. It's people aren't falling for it. People are
No,
seeing right through it. And I personally, if I was going to put a year's wages on yes or no, I would actually put my money on. It's not going to happen.
no, it's not.
I
Not
feel
having it.
it's not going to happen. Yeah.
No.
So the second one is imagine you've just jumped into a time machine. You feel it going through time and space. You hear it stop. Doors open. There's 12-year-old Gareth Icke stood in front of you. What one piece of advice would you give that young kid?
Get a haircut. Buy crypto. buy some crypto, mate. I'm not massively into that stuff, but I tell you what, mate. Like I was in Mexico last year, and when I got there, they were saying like, earlier this year, they were saying, mate, way Britain's going. When are you getting out? Like when are you and your family getting out? And I was like, mate, I don't want to. Like I'm an Englishman, my kids are English. I want to stay and fight, but just out of interest, if shit does really hit the fan, like what are you like? What house prices like here? What and these guys were from Canada. And they were COVID refugees, they called themselves. And there was a lot of them, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, like that had moved to Mexico. And this Canadian guy goes, I don't know, you probably get like a half decent place for like maybe, I don't know, like 800K, a million? Yeah, maybe a million. And I went, a million pesos. And he went, no, US. I went, right, so £800,000. I think I'll get a pretty good place in England for £800,000. But the disconnect, but that's because they all got into crypto early, and they made a fortune, and then they got the hell out.
And they made millions.
So I'd probably say that because then, as much as I'm not a money-driven guy, I'm not. But money does give you freedom in the sense of
it certainly opens a lot of doors, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're trying to make a documentary on furniture regs and fire safety and stuff, and the whole rabbit hole that is. And I would love to have a bunch of money to be able to make a much bigger version of it. So. Money helps with stuff. So that I'd probably tell myself that.
Yeah, that's a great one. And then the final one, Gareth, is in your opinion, what's the number one thing that's wrong with the world right now? And what one thing would you do to solve it?
Apathy. Apathy is the one thing that's wrong. Well, that and ego, but I think the two of them kind of like amalgamate into each other in a way. Really? Yeah, I'm all right, Jack. It's fine. Because it's not happening to you. No, it's not happening to you yet. That I think is the number one killer, to be honest, of apathy, of just whatever. And it's the old adage, isn't it? First they came for, and I said nothing. That's the thing. We need to get off that and fight for people that we disagree with, fight for people that we don't like. That was one of the main things that I wanted to get across during that big speech in London during that COVID stuff was like, I love every single one of you and all the police officers and everyone, and even everyone that's watching this shaking their head and thinking that I'm a dickhead, basically, because you might not want to fight, but we're fighting for you as well as ourselves. And it's that unwillingness to stick up for people around you and stick up for people that you maybe disagree with that I think is the root of a lot of our issues. Because when you look at it on a numbers game, the people that make decisions and rule this planet, you fucking count them on one hand compared to the billions and billions of others. And the only way that they can do that is by the billions of people either being submissive or apathetic towards what's going on and towards their fellow men and women. If we can ditch that, I look at people all the time and I think, I can't stand that guy. Guy's a complete dickhead. And I actually really dislike some of the shit that comes out of his mouth. But I tell you what, I will fight to the death for his right to say it. And that's, that's the point. That's I don't see a nuance really with free speech and freedom of expression and stuff. Just it should just be.
Yeah. There's either free speech or there isn't. That's it.
Free speech for everyone or it doesn't exist. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And that counts for algorithms too, as much as people like to pretend it doesn't. Freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. Well, it's not freedom of speech then. If you're suppressing someone's voice, if you're locking someone in a room but allowing him to shout at the top of his lungs where no one can hear him, he's not got free speech, mate.
No. When that woman said that, who was she? Was she the new boss of Google or something like that?
She's the new boss of X, mate. She was the one that freedom of speech Elon Musk put in charge of X.
Oh yeah, Mr. Free Thinker alternative. Anyway, we'll not go there because it'll end up being another hour
That's a
conversation.
whole
But
another one, mate.
yeah, when she said that, it was the first thing I thought. I literally looked at my screen and went, "Are you fucking kidding me? Really?"
That's it.
But to be that brazen and to say that to the world, thinking, "Oh, no one's going to see this," or just to be that arrogant and think, "Well, I don't really care because I'm gonna say it just in a more roundabout way." But I bet lots of people would have gone, "Oh yeah, that's fair enough." But I was like, "Really? You're an idiot." But
That's
anyway.
the thing. I think they're quite emboldened now to the point where they think they're infallible. So even like someone like Netanyahu will just come out and say stuff now, and I can almost see in his eyes, an attitude of what are you going to do about it? Like when he says stuff, and arrogance comes before a fall, man, big time.
I agree. I agree with that, and I think as well. Just on that note, for trying to leave the end of the conversation on a positive note, that I can't remember who I heard first coin this expression, but I think it's so true. It's like, a lot of people saying like, how comes we're suddenly seeing all this craziness in the world come out into the open? And I genuinely do believe that it's the last thrashings of a dying consciousness, because as your dad and many other people have said, it's got to the point where, what does he call it? The totalitarian tiptoe has now had to become a sprint because so many people are awakening to what's really going on. They're having to just stand up and go, right, we don't care if people see us right through it. We've just literally got to bludgeon our way through everyone and everything and make it happen. But conversely,
they can't do that.
It's desperate. Yeah.
Desperate. For me, it's a tantrum at the checkout because the toddler's not allowed to eat. That's what it is. And that's what, when I see these people like, Starmer and others, like, is anyone really frightened of Keir Starmer? Like, come on. They are just petulant little children. And they need exposing and laughing at.
When he came out the other day with his when he was going on about digital IDs, when he made his announcement, was it last week or the week before? And he went, and to the people you will not be able to work. This is mandatory. And I was looking at him going, mate, seriously, you couldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding, honestly.
No. The only way they can get that through.
That.
The only way they can get it through is emergency legislation, like they did with the Coronavirus Act, and that's the worry for me. That I think that's what they're going to attempt to do, whether it be another terrorist attack or a series of things like that they'll blame on immigrants and say that this is why we need digital ID, and try and create that fear that they created in the early days of COVID, where people didn't think clearly, or very few people thought clearly, because they went into a fight or flight mode.
And once you keep them in that, it's then very difficult to get them out of it as well. But that said, and I had Pete Stone on the show about 2-3 months ago. But it's interesting. I'm going to get one of the. I'm going to try and get either him or Carl back on the show to talk about this at some point in the near future, if I can, because obviously you've had them on a 2 or 3 of your shows in Ickonic. They've obviously got a very different take on it because of what true sovereignty means. Because I'm on a call with Carl. It's a group Zoom call that he's doing in about 2 weeks' time, where he's talking about looking at ways to actually extract yourself from that in a way that's completely above board and uses their system. So yeah, I'd love to actually get him on and talk about that.
That would sound cool.
Yeah. But anyway, Gareth, honestly, mate, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. It's gone as we said off camera, it's gone in a completely different direction that I would have imagined it did. But they're always the best ones. And for everyone watching who are still here, thanks again for your ongoing support. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and share with anyone else you know who could benefit from the wisdom of great guests like Gareth on the show. And obviously remember to hit remember to hit the little bell button as well, so you know when the new episodes come out. Again, as always, I always say this to my regulars, thank you ever so much for your ongoing support. Absolutely means the world. This channel would not exist without you. So thank you to everyone. And of course, Gareth, thanks a million for being on. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this for so long, and it's been such a great conversation. And I hope everybody enjoys this as much as I did. And definitely would love to have you back on at some point in the near future. Thanks.
I'd love that, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. We're all going to win. We're going to win in the end. Just remember that.
100%. Yeah. We've got to know that from here, but cannot 100%. Agree more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers, mate.
All right, everyone. Bye for now. See you soon.
See ya.